The history of the Democratic Party after Franklin Roosevelt. The Democratic Party dates back to 1792 but did not adopt the name Democratic Party until the 1840s. This adoption took place when Thomas Jefferson labeled his party the Republicans, and people on the opposite view needed a label to place on their views. Today I will be focusing on the Democratic Party from the time of Franklin Roosevelt's presidency until the present. The Democratic view used to be socially conservative and physically liberal. In 1912, Theodore Roosevelt ran for the presidency as a progressive, which in turn led to the Republicans and Democrats swapping platforms. We see these ideas still in today's government, while both parties have become more liberal since the 1920s. The role of the president changed into what it is now under Franklin Roosevelt after the Great Depression. The president did not have as big of a responsibility in economic and social policy as the office holds today. Parties have long campaigned on leaning government and social programs from one direction to the other, whether it be to the left or to the right. This idea that the president was now in charge and held accountable for the economy and social implementations started under Franklin Roosevelt's presidency. The election of 1932 set the tone for the Democratic Party, and politics for that matter, for years to come. The Democrats not only won the presidency, but also became the majority party across the United States of America. During Franklin Roosevelt's first term, he implemented and ran on what is known as the New Deal domestic program. The goal of this program was to provide economic relief as well as reforms in industry, agriculture, finance, water power, labor, and housing. Some New Deal programs are still around today, and many have evolved into what other programs we see today as well. We have Social Security and a minimum wage currency still today, as well as regulations on banks and stockbrokers. Moving into the years following Franklin Roosevelt's presidency, the Civil Rights era started to take shape. Fighting for the end of segregation and more rights for women, these movements were catalyzed by Martin Luther King Jr., who championed for equal rights and desegregation, Margaret Sanger, who founded what we know now as the Planned Parenthood Federation, and Mary Bethune, who organized the National Council of Negro Women, just to name a few. Some of these foundations and programs are still talked about today. The ideas of the Democratic Party started shifting farther towards big government and socially liberal policies. These were seen under the Clinton administration, who combined conservative economic ideas with socially liberal ideas to win the election of 1993 against the incumbent President George H.W. Bush. Although much of Bill's time as president was surrounded in scandal and marked by the famed Monica Lewinsky, Clinton was responsible for the North American Free Trade Agreement, which created a lateral trade system between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. The last decade has marked the biggest turning point in our nation's ideas and policies. In the last 10 years, our nation has begun to embrace the idea of homosexuality, a socialist economy, and placing restrictions on our First and Second Amendment rights. We voted in our nation's first African-American president, which we thought would have a positive effect on race relations in this country, but has sadly stalled the progress of our country and set us back. Inflation hit our economy and our national debt doubled. Social media has become a big driving force and source of information in our election cycles. And we have seen an increase in media bias via the way information has been presented to the American people, whether it be from the left or the right. The Democratic Party once stood for the right of free speech, and now a once proud cornerstone of the free speech movement in UC Berkeley, it has now been relentlessly attacking the right of free speech for people they think should not be allowed to speak. Some common philosophies of the Democratic Party today are abortion, open borders, strict regulations on business, as well as a $15 per hour minimum wage and gay rights. What was once a movement to desegregate our schools and bathrooms has become a movement that seeks to oppress the authority of our law enforcement. With the Democratic Party heading in the direction of a socialist government ideology, a total government reform appears to be on the horizon for whoever the next Democratic leader is. Unless the Republicans can change the direction in which the country heads, much like the Democrats changed the presidency in 1932, the way forward for this country is in the acceptance and discussion of opposing views in an attempt to reach a compromise. If both parties prevent the other side from sharing their ideas, our country will stay divided in where it is currently.